Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Now it's time to introduce our main speaker for tonight, Larry.
Hi everybody, my name is Larry Thomas and I'm an alcoholic. And I'd like to thank John for asking me to come out and be here. I can talk, okay. See? And I'm glad to be with you guys. I want to welcome the new guys and happy birthday to all the men that got sober here. We can keep Chris away from everybody. We'll get some women sober, you know. But I'm glad to be with you guys. My sponsor tells me that I'm living proof that a man can stay sober for a little over 27 years. And and not amount to a damn thing. So I don't know where you think if you're going if you're new, but the highest I've ever gotten here was sober, basic human being, active member of my own home group. And that's as high as I need to get, you know. I got a busy head. I got a head that loves to chat. And it seems like the more tireder I am, the more it wants to chat. And last night it wanted to chat. About 2:30 in the morning, I get this, "Hey, Larry, I know you're in there," you know, and it starts chatting, you know, talks about when I'm a baby, brings me right up to date, for God's sakes, you know, and then I started thinking about my swimming pool. If the water starts leaking, where does the water go to, you know? Does it go underneath the house? Will it go to the neighbor's yard, you know? And this bothered me. I don't own a pool. But I was thinking about getting one, you know, and I spend all day turning my life and my will over to the care of a loving God, and then spend all night wondering just how the hell he did, you know. And I've always been a worrier, you know. And when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous in 1982, I was wondering what would shut off the nightmares and the voices. I wanted the nightmares to go away. And in our book, Alcoholics Anonymous, in the doctor's opinion, it says that the only answer we have is entire abstinence. And then it starts with another paragraph that says, "This starts a seething cauldron of debate." You bet. I've been debating that my entire life. I'm the type of alcoholic that the longer I stay sober, the worse I feel. That sobriety drove me to drink time and time and time again. I couldn't stand the way that I felt when I was sober. And I'd come to Alcoholics Anonymous and I would not drink, and I would see guys up at this box with these ties on saying stuff like, 30 days ago, I was on the streets of Los Angeles. Now I'm the president of the Bank of America. Thank you, you know. And my God, I came in with that guy, you know. And so not drinking was never a good idea for me, because not drinking is the thing that drove me to drink time and time and time again. I couldn't stand the way I felt when I was sober, you know. And I have no reason to feel that way. I come from a great home. I was born in Detroit, and I come out to California when I was about 3 or 4 years old. My mom and dad separated, and I was brought up in a little foster home over in Gardena and Harbor City. And my mom and dad finally got together again, and my mom's a little Scandinavian lady, and my mom loved diet pills. So she was always eating that speed and running around the house around midnight, sorting out nuts and bolts all night, and raking the neighbor's yard around 4 o'clock in the morning, and she used to eat that speed and make Afghans, and everything in the house had fresh Afghans on it, The couch had Afghans, the chairs had Afghans, my dad's golf clubs had little poodle heads, If there was any animals running around, they had a fresh vest on, and it was a small house, and you can hear her in the next room just going to town, and no matter what time you got up, she was up doing shit, just a busy lady, and running around the house and, scrubbing things with your toothbrush, and when you're living with a paranoid lady like that, they have a lot of rules, And one of the mom rules was don't play in their gutter, you'll get polio, And the other one was burnt food is good for your gums. Because she'd be in there cooking shit and you'd get away from her, and you'd come back and, she'd give you this burnt piece of toast in the morning, don't you make that face, you little son of a, that burnt food is good for your gums, Now, she don't have a tooth in her head, you know what I mean, God damn it, but I learned to love my mom, and her favorite hobby was to take that speed and make these 20, 30 million piece jigsaw puzzles, of the Mojave Desert, and it's going to be a beige night tonight, honey, and she had a little routine. She'd run off to Save-Ons, get her a carton of Raleigh cigarettes because they had coupons, and she saved the coupons to buy more yarn. It was a hideous cycle she was caught up in, She'd come home, and put her one and only muumuu on she had for 40 years, and that thing was wearing thin, and get away from the window, Mom, and put that stinky peroxide on her hair, and make this big jigsaw puzzle, and take some more speed, and if she got a piece that didn't fit, well, there was a big pair of toenail clippers, and she'd snip that son of a bitch down, and just a busy lady. Now, I knew my mom, as I had no idea I laid eyes on my first tweaker. I had no. But as busy and as goofy as that lady was, I knew that she loved me. I could always recognize when people loved me. You know what I mean? And what was to happen to me, which would come out in the 4th and 5th step in Alcoholics Anonymous, is that started a pattern of what I would do with people who loved me, who showed me any type of attention or affection. And I would play them like a fiddle. And I never want to forget what it's like to be 16 years old, still in high school, get sent away for a little bit, a couple months, and I'm supposed to come back on a Monday, and I show up on a Wednesday, and I don't show up at the house. I show up at my mom's place of business, this little dry cleaners over there in Gardena. And my mom's, it's this April cold morning, it's about 9 o'clock in the morning, and the rain's coming down, and my mom's in the dry cleaners, and I'm in the parking lot. She don't know where I've been, and I'm standing there with the only thought that I have is she better have a buck. Now, she's about from here to that kitchen. And I walked into that lady's place of business one more time and startled her with my presence, which would be an ongoing thing for me. And I walked into that lady, and without skipping a beat, I asked her for some money. And that frightened lady opened up her little purse, and a picture of me falls out when I'm 8 years old on a Little League team. The only decent picture she'd ever have of me. And she gives me that $1 and then $2, and I run off to Wilmington when I'm going to die. You know what I mean? Now, the thing that brings it home to me if you're new, which brings it right home to me if you're new, is you take this same man and bring him to Alcoholics Anonymous when his life depends on it. When my being here depends everything that I do here. And you put me in a meeting when my life depends on it. And you put a secretary of a meeting that same distance as me and my mom. And I want to ask you, how come when my life depends on it, I can't walk that distance and ask that secretary for a job in a meeting that's going to save my life? But I can walk that distance and use my mom time and time and time and time and time again. And I'm here to share with you, if you knew, that if my alcoholism doesn't kill me, My selfishness and my self-centeredness will, make no mistake about that, which is why it's necessary for a man with close to 28 years to be close to and active in a program called Alcoholics Anonymous, and more so a home group. Because if there's anything that I'm going to tell you tonight, newcomers, is this. I hope you remember this. And that is, I will never get so sober that I can't get drunk again. But I can get so drunk that I can't make it back. And I never want to forget what it's like to stand outside your windows here and look into your meetings on a Halloween or a Christmas or a cold April morning or a sunny May afternoon and wonder, will I ever have a part of this thing called Alcoholics Anonymous? Will I always be on the outside looking in? Because that's where I spent my entire life. My entire life passed me by like a train. And I'm wondering how you jump on this son of a gun. And I had no idea. I couldn't blame it on my parents. They didn't do nothing wrong. I had a wonderful dad. My dad was my hero. My dad was a happy drunk, is what he was. He was a happy singing the blues, Nat King Cole, Bobby Darin drunk. He loved to drink and sneak into his own damn house. It was an amazing thing, you know. And he's a refinery worker, and he's got these big-ass boots, and I can tell when he's sneaking in because he's sneaking in my bedroom window around midnight, and he's coming in with that big boot, stepping on my chest. I grabbed that boot one night, and I said, hey, Pop, I said, why don't you have Mom make you a set of keys, you know? My God, she's up anyway, you know. I mean, I can hear the Hoover going now, for God's sakes, you know. And I tell you, my dad was my hero. My dad was like having Lou Gehrig in the house for a long time, man. I love my dad. My dad was one of these guys, he was a hard-working guy. My dad was the type of guy that when he started things, he finished them. My dad was the type of guy who had character. My dad used to tell me, you don't know how good you got it. Back when I was your age, we really did have it tough. And my God, he was right. I've never been strapped with gratitude. I got to be beaten half to death today to be grateful for the life that I have. I got to have a sponsor constantly tell me, you're just constantly hammering me. Don't you know how good you got it, you know? And my dad was always telling me that, you know. Back when I was your age, son, I really had it tough. And he did, you know. His father died at a young age, choked on his tongue in a convulsion. His mom hung herself in a Detroit jail. She was a drunken whore. And he had a dream, and that dream was to marry my mom, get her out of that convent, you know. And he wanted a clean one, you know, and you know, they were teenage sweethearts, you know, and their dream was to raise a family, come to California, and live the good life, because everybody was running to California, you know, and live the good life and raise some kids. That was their dream, and I became a nightmare of that dream. Now, the thing that bothered me wasn't that all this crazy stuff going in the house and people hacking up turkeys and throwing them all over and stuff. The thing that bothered me was that I had a pretty good, we didn't have a lot of dough, but there was nothing to validate how crazy I felt. I couldn't pin it on anything. I grew up looking for an answer, and I didn't know what the problem was. All I know is there's something wrong with me. And no matter how good I did in school, and that's all my dad wanted me, I want you to do good in school. I want you to be good. I want you to do good. I'm not an alcoholic. Doing good don't make me feel good. Makes you feel good that I'm doing good, but doing good has no long-lasting effect on me. It doesn't do what it does for other people. I get bored with life. I need a little more excitement. I don't need as much sleep as some people, you know? And I get bored easy, and I'm thinking that I need normal living. And the more normal I live, the crazier I get. I could be surrounded by normal living, and it drives me nuts. But yet I come to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I think that that's the thing that's going to help me out. I mean, to the untrained eye, you come to these meetings, and that's exactly what happens here. To the untrained eye, people come to this meeting, they stop drinking, they get a little job, they get a little car, they get somebody to dance with, and to the untrained eye, it looks like the solution to this disease is normal living. And nothing could be further from the truth. We got people in this room tonight that couldn't put another damn car in their driveway, and they're restless, and they're irritable, and discontented, and every material instinct of their life is satisfied, and they're absolutely out of their mind. And they're thinking that AA don't work. The solution to this disease isn't satisfying the material for a guy like me. You can get that stuff with hard work and good fortune. The solution to this disease for me and other people who are alcoholics of my type is me, you, and that book and the perpetuation of this gift. That is the most precious gift you'll ever have, is to perpetuate the gift that you have. This place wasn't started so you guys can have a good life and take off and just come back and take a cake. They're hoping you'll come back and carry this message and tell some son of a bitch what happened to you. What did it used to be like? What happened to you? What was it like your first 100 days? If I ever forget what it used to be like, I'm a dead man. And you guys have given me the magnificent principle of perpetuating this gift. And yet some people get sober and they think they deserve it because they're not drinking. You look at that picture with the two guys and the man on the bed. Do you really think they're telling that guy you need to work some more overtime? I don't think that's what's going on in there. They're hoping you will grab this way of life like a torch and tell somebody what happened to you. Tell somebody what happened to you. Not from this box, for God's sakes. Speakers are the easiest thing to get in AA. The coffee makers are a son of a bitch to get. Try to get somebody to, my God, we got 200 people in here and we can't raise enough dough for rent? You're welcome. But yet they'll come up here and take cakes and tell you about their blessings. They've been blessed with this and they've been blessed with that, and watch them like a hawk. Because in a matter of time, they begin to hang themselves with their great blessings. And they forget to come back to the place that blessed them when no one else would. There's nothing wrong with having the good life. But by God, you better tell somebody how you did it. Everybody talks about reworking these steps. My God, they're thinking you're going to take somebody through them with you. Everybody want to go through them by themselves. I want to work on my defects again. I'm going to stay home and work on my sloth. You know what I mean? I got this one kid that's a professor up north. He called me up. He said, "Hey, Spons, how you doing?" I said, "I'm all right, Billy. How are you?" And he says, "Okay." He says, "I'm a little obsessed with some computer porn, but my AA life is great." I says, "For God's sake, you son of a gun, that is your AA life. What I do when I'm away from you has everything to do with what type of member I am. What I'm like at home, work, and play has everything to do with what type of AA member I am without anybody knowing I'm an AA member. That's where this thing kicks in. And that's exactly what the old man wanted me to have, is this good life. And I love my dad, but I tell you what, I couldn't please him. I would try to be good, and I would try to be a good athlete, but I tell you what, it made me feel hollow in there. At the age of 12 years old, there was 4 of us in a garage, and I started to pass around a bottle of 4 Rose whiskey. Felt better than any home run I ever hit. Shut this head off. Quieted that grinding, and for the first time in my life, I felt normal. For the first time in my life, I felt okay being me. And then I puked. But I had a reference point. Now, I didn't head out to Skid Row that next day, but by golly, I got the address, And I never forgot that place that a couple drinks takes this alcoholic, And from that point on, it was all around the house. My dad had that Thunderbird wine and Mad Dog wine and some whiskey around the house, and it was the easiest thing for me to get. And by the time I got into high school, I started dating this little Mexican girl, and her brothers liked cars, and I love cars. We loved lowered cars. We used to lower our cars down about this high off the ground, get our hair up real big like a Bakersfield tumbleweed, drive around, listen to the Four Tops and the Temptations and Marvin Gaye, and God, I loved it, man. I was in my plumbing truck the other day, and the Four Tops came on. I just started sinking in my damn truck, man. I loved it. I had these white T-shirts with black khaki pants that came up to here. Women were telling me that men who are well endowed had big feet. I had a pair of 15-inch shoes I was wearing, Somebody tripped over my foot tonight, and I felt proud. I said, let me move that thing, I loved it, man. I had a Mexican girl named Lupe. She used to curl her hair up real big, and we'd drive around drinking that port wine, wondering what the hell you're looking at. What are you looking at? Got our frowns on our ass because our asses hurt from driving around all night, One night we're drinking that 151 rum, went into the Jack in the Box, She says, what, I'll pull up and talk to the puppet, you know. I can't see the puppet, you know. I can hear the puppet, but I can't see the puppet. I drive it in there, you know. Can I have your order, please, you know. And I turn around the corner, bang, run over the puppet. Puppet's head's hanging down, yelling at me. Can I have your order, please, you know. The cops come, they arrest me, they throw me on the hood of the car. They shatter my hair all over the place, you know. I don't drive till I'm 30, big deal. Let Rudy drive. He ain't doing nothing anyway, and there's nothing like riding shotgun. There's nothing like drinking that cheap wine and riding shotgun. Drinking that cheap wine, eating those Reds, looking in that rearview mirror. Boy, you want to get an alkie's attention? Put a mirror in front of him. Oh, man, you look at that mirror, Jesus Christ, are you good looking? You know? My God, you ought to be an underwear model, for God's sakes, you know? You don't wear any, but what the hell, you know? And you look at yourself in that mirror, and there you are, you know? Your hair's all big and slanted because you've been laying on the window sleeping, you know. You got some cigarette butts stuck in your hair. You got 30 pounds of tamale puke on your chest, you know. And by golly, I feel like dancing when I look like that, you know. I don't know about you. I feel like dancing the salsa when I look like that, you know. And we go over to Shanghai Reds, and I go looking for that salsa queen, you know. And you got to let that gal know you got that rum on your breath so she knows that you're in operating mode, you know. You got that 151 on your breath, and you see your gal, and she's over there by the bar. And her hair's all big. She's got cigarette butts and flies stuck in her hair, you know. She's got these big curls that she's been curling with these old soup cans, and the noodles are still stuck in there, you know. She's got 30 pounds of tamale puke on her chest. She's over there gnawing on a pickled pig feet, and I like that about a woman, you know. And I got to have that gal, you know. So I got my big feet, and I'm getting ready to go talk to her, you know. I'm 120 pounds. I can't lick a stamp, you know. I got these little arms that are about this big, you know. When I drink, I get drunk, and I push those arms against the car door so you don't mess with me, you know. And I figured I got to have that gal. And I go up there, and I start talking to that gal. Her lesbian girlfriend comes over and starts beating the snot out of me, you know, and she's a big Samoan gal, and I got these big feet, and they're stuck between the footrail and the bar, you know. So she's just, boom, she's knocking me down, and I'm stuck, and I keep coming up, and she's boom, like that, you know, and this gal's knocking the snot out of me for about 2 hours, and the only thought that I have is when I'm done, I'm going to kick her ass, you know, and take that little salsa queen home. Wake up that next morning and take that 90-year-old woman back to the home, you know. But I tell you, I loved it. I loved every time I took a drink at that time in my life, man. Every time. I ran into a kid like that not too long ago. I was up there at the Glendale Mall. I'm walking through the Glendale Mall several years ago. This kid comes walking by me. He's got his mom's earrings on. He's got a ring in his eye. He's got a ring in this eye. He's got a ball bearing in his nose. He's got a ring in his lip. He's got a ball bearing in his tongue. He's got a chain to his wallet. I go walking by him, and he goes, well, what the hell are you looking at? I says, I don't have a damn clue what I'm looking at, you know. And I wanted to squirt him with some WD-40 just to keep him moving, you know. And we started talking, and now I sponsor the guy, you know. And he lived down in San Diego, you know, and now he lives over in Utah. But I remember when he was new, he used to call me up, Spons, what do you want me to do? I said, Jesus, Ronnie. I said, why don't you unlock yourself? You know, you know. Well, I go to these meetings and I feel so different. Really? I said, maybe it's because you're the only one wrapped up in a chain link fence. How about that, Ronnie? You know. But I tell you, man, for a long, long time, the only, and you know, being a lowrider and all that doesn't make me an alcoholic. And I tell you, if you're new, the thing that does. And the thing that happened to me for a long, long time is every time I took a shot of alcohol, whether it be bourbon or whatever, it opened up the most beautiful picture window I've ever seen in my life. And this god-awful, weak, terrified little kid would step into the most beautiful picture. And man, I tell you, thank God for the phenomenon of craving, because it just kept that picture going. Kept that picture going, man. And the trouble with my life, and the trouble with some of the people in here, is that the longer I drank, the smaller that window got. And the smaller that window got, and the smaller that window got. And by the time I come to Alcoholics Anonymous, there was no beautiful big picture window. There was just this thought. There was this maddening thought that would become the only dream of my life, and practically the only dream in your life, and that is maybe this time it'll be different. I'm the type of alcoholic that every time I get sober, I can look over 20 years of drinking, and I can see every face of everybody that I've ever used, abused, hurt, terrified. I'm the type of alcoholic that every time I get sober, I can see the physical things happening to me. It's quite obvious, and so can everybody else. I'm the type of alcoholic that every time I get sober, I know the consequences of where I'm going and the places I'm going to be locked up in. But I'm also the alcoholic of this type that every time I stop drinking, it's just a matter of days, weeks, or months, that I come up with a profound conclusion that this time it's going to be different. This time it ain't going to get me. And it doesn't come to me in those words. I didn't learn those words till I came with you. It comes to me and screw it. I can't handle it anymore. I'm not drinking now, and I'm absolutely out of my mind. I'm absolutely crazy now. And I'm destined to try something that's killing me. What type of hideous disease is that? That this thing is killing you is the only place that we ever get any peace. The only peace of mind I ever found was 2 shots into that bottle. And the only peace that I've ever found since then has been in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. Through the process of this book and working those steps and making amends to people. You see, if you're an alcoholic, if you don't find that peace, you're destined to go to the place where you knew you'll find it. You will take that shot that maybe this time it'll be different. Because you know there's peace there. And I had no idea what was going on with me. And in 1969, all my buddies are going places, and some are going to Vietnam, and some are going to different places. And I thought, well, maybe I'll find my roots and go back to Detroit. And me and my buddy head off to Detroit, and we wound up in Phoenix. Over at the Apache Hotel, about 4 flies up, you know, everybody's got a TV, it's in the lobby, everybody's got a bathroom, and it's down the hall. It's $35 a month, and I can't get the money to get that. So I go down to the Wagon Wheel Bar, and I meet a guy named Ernie. Ernie says, I know what we're going to do. I know a plumber. Come here the next morning, and we'll put you to work. I show up the next morning. He introduces me to this plumber. He says, come on, kid, I'll put you to work. Sticks me underneath this house. He says, I don't want you to move from underneath this house. All I want you to do, kid, is string copper. And all day long, I'm stringing that copper. And the guy takes off. He leaves me with a transistor radio. I got a half pint of Kessler's. I got a stray cat looking at me, you know. And I figured, hell, I'm on top of the world here, you know. I've got a transistor. I got a pint. Got a pet. You know. This is great, you know. I start drinking that Kessler's, you know, and before you know it, you know, I'm goofy, and they come and they drag me out from underneath the house, and apparently I busted up through the bedroom door, robbed a lady of all of her jewelry and money, you know, and they're pulling me out. This cat comes running out with a bunch of necklaces on, you know, and I get fired from that job, you know, and I go back to the Wagon Wheel Bar, you know, and Ernie says, Larry, he says, I know what to do. He says, not too far from here is a horse track. He says, we're going to get you down to 95 pounds. You're going to be a jockey, you know, and I thinking we're going to start working out here or something like that, you know. And he says, hey, what I want you to do is I want you to take some of this. And the guy had a bag of speed. And, you know, I don't do that. I've been doing heroin and drinking, minding my own business, you know. And no, you take this stuff. And it looked like, you know, and he was sure it was going to work. He says, take this stuff and I'll come back in 2 months and we'll go weigh you in, you know. And he took off. And I'm in my little room, and he took off. And he comes back 2 weeks later, and I haven't moved an inch. You know, I just, you know, I don't want to be a jockey, Ernie. I'm going faster than any goddamn horse I've ever seen in my life, you know. And I haven't left my little room. I'm just busy chasing a fly around and looking out the shade, you know. And what's that? What's that? What's that? You know, and seeing these black and white flashes that are driving me nuts, and it's the sun going up and down, you know, and He comes running back, you know, you couldn't have possibly taken all that. Well, I did, and I need some more, goddammit, you know, and start going after him. Anything that's white and on the ground, I'm trying to fire up, you know. It could be a toenail, and that baby's going up, man, you know. So finally, I got another job with a plumber, and I worked for him for about an hour. I found out that he was younger than me, and I'm not working for a kid. I got my pride, you know. And I faked a knee injury, and I went down to the county hospital. I'm sitting in the doctor's office, and he writes me a prescription for Percodan, and he takes off, and there's a box of prescription pads that it looks like he ain't going to need. So I take those. And me and Ernie meet these guys down in Tucson, and I start writing prescriptions, and, you know, writing prescriptions for Seconal and Nebutol and Tuinol, you name it all. I wrote it all, you know. Just, you know, and damn near took it all, too. And after about 8 months, they caught up with me. And when you're loaded on barbiturates and whiskey, there's no freeway chase, you know. There he goes down to 5, you know. It's just a matter of the sheriff coming into the old Busy Bee Hotel going, there he is under there, you know. Butt naked again, you know. And so they locked me up. They convicted me, put me away in southern Arizona for a small period of time, and they gave me a $45 voucher to come back to California, and I register at the LA City Hall, and they get me a little room in downtown Torrance, put me on Antabuse in 1974. I'm on Antabuse, and I got about 3 months sober, and I'm not going to AA. Don't even heard about AA. I get a little job at a refinery as a laborer. I go over to the refinery. I'm about 3 hours early, and I'm in a Little League dugout, and I go absolutely out of my mind. I don't got any alcohol or drugs in me. I'm in this Little League dugout. I'm in between hysterical and maniacal. My paranoia is so bad that I'm hallucinating, and I'm going into a place I know I'm never coming out. And I don't know what happened to me, but before I know it, I'm at the Harbor General Hospital. They've got hoses coming out of me, and I don't know what's going on. They say by the looks of your jacket that, you know, maybe your drug overdoses have been suicide attempts, and it looks like you got some things going on with you, kid, that I think you need to go out to the state hospital by Oxnard to be observed for about 30 or 60 days. And a year later, they let me out. And I was totally observed, believe me, you know, and they gave me my psychotics and some liquid shock to take and some Thorazine, and after about 3 months, I run out of Thorazine, and they find me over at Olvero Street, a public drunk, a public nuisance. They rolled me up and they sent me up to Wayside again, and I'm up at Wayside for about 50 or 60 days. They put about 50 of us in a black and white bus and sent us down to the South Bay Courthouse in Torrance, California, and I'm in this holding tank about this size. It's just concrete floors and old bologna sandwiches. And I'm laying on the floor with a Vaughn's bag and no hope. Everybody's gone, all the buses are gone, and I'm wondering, where am I going now? Everybody's gone, and I don't know where I'm going now, you know? And at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, a Scottish man with a patch opened up a jail door, and he says, "Are you Larry Thomas?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I am." He says, "Why don't you come with me, son? We're going to AA." I said, "AA?" I says, "I've never heard of those initials. I've heard of OR and PO, but what's AA, you know?" And, you know, looking back 27 years, that man was my first trusted servant I've ever seen in my life. And what would make this man a trusted servant is that he had no business being there. He wasn't on a panel. He wasn't an H&I. He wasn't a counselor. He wasn't a probation officer. He was a refinery worker who just got the worst news of his life. And the news was that his wife was dying immediately of a terminal disease. And he knew she was in good hands, but he knew he wasn't. You see, but somewhere in his home group, somewhere in his book studies, somewhere in his speaker meetings, his topic discussions, somewhere in his meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, that man was surrounded by people who had principles that were this. Practical experience tells us that nothing will ensure immunity than intensive work with other alcoholics, that this works when other activities fail. And he turned his car around and he headed out to that South Bay courthouse. He talked to Judge Foy and Judge Hollingsworth, and they said, "I think we got a guy for you." And that man took me to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was ready for about a 2-hour drive up north and maybe some lunch. And that man took me for a 15-minute car ride to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. This little dingy, stinky, smelly Alano Club over there in Torrance called the TLC Alano Club. Rolled up to this dingy Alano. I don't even know what the word means. What the hell is an Alano? Is that like an elk or a moose, you know? Watch for crossing Alanos, you know? And he pulled up to this Alano Club, and there's all the Alanos walking around, you know? Everybody's got a nickname and a tattoo, you know, and he pulled up to this club and he introduced me to all these goofy people, Indian Genie and Captain Bob and Singing Sam and Serenity Sam and Bicycle Ray and Santa Claus Ray and, you know, Dancing Pete and Whistling Butt and all these other people, you know. I just left a group of people, like little Moose come running after me. Hi, honey, my name is Moose and I'm expecting a miracle. I said, I bet you are. I said, I'm not it, you know, and some transvestite came out of that card room. He starts circling me like a helicopter in Norwalk, you know, and after about 3 times around, he finally lands, and he comes walking over to me in his muumuu, and he says, I can't wait to take you to our candlelight meeting. I said, I don't think so, big fella, you know. Not till I get a year anyway, you know. I said, my God, if that's AA, I don't want any part of it. And if that's the effect of that blue book, I don't want to crack that thing open. And from 1975 to 1982, I came in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous on a regular basis, and the biggest lie that I've ever told myself was that I was coming in and out of AA. I hadn't touched Alcoholics Anonymous. I did what I'd done my entire life. I sat in a room waiting for somebody to do something for me. I sat in a room waiting for something to happen to me. And if you're new in Alcoholics Anonymous, what you're waiting to be done to you, God's waiting to do through you. But I've had my hand out my entire life. If you're new in Alcoholics Anonymous, be prepared to be divinely inconvenienced for the rest of your damn life. Because I tell you, Alcoholics Anonymous has nothing to do with comfort. You have to do the uncomfortable to get comfortable. And I don't like that kind of deal. I had my hand out my entire life. I'm a something-for-nothing man. Give me mine, I'll do the work later. And Alcoholics Anonymous has nothing to do with that. It's about giving. If you're new in Alcoholics Anonymous, you better get busy up to your ears to get out of yourself. Do whatever your sponsor tells you, and for God's sakes, get a sponsor. And they're easy to find. They're making the coffee. They're setting up the chairs. They're putting away the chairs. They're busy in these meetings. You see, and that's the neat thing about my sponsor. You see, the thing that saves my life today for 27 years isn't all the cakes that I've taken. It's all the regular meetings that I go to on a daily basis. You see, it's that little routine that I complain about. Those meetings on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and if I'm home on Friday. That routine has saved my life. There is nothing worse than being crazy in AA and wonder where you should go tonight. And there's nothing more secure than to be crazy in AA and know where you're supposed to be in 2 hours. And that's why I have these regular routines. Because I will never get so sober that I can't get drunk again. And I need to visit you on a regular basis. I can't stay sober on stuff I did 3 years ago. That Scottish man with the patch, his sponsors up in Oregon, had 46 years. He's trying to figure out how he can get 3 weeks. 46 years. And they asked him, Hap, what happened to you? You had so many years. He says, I know. I had a bunch of years, but I didn't have any days. It's the days that keep you sober. It's the actions you take today that'll keep you sober today. And on May 2nd, 1982, I'm checking into the mission down there in Wilmington, and I catch eyes with the thing. The thing's 120 pounds, and he's yellow. And I'm not drunk. I look at myself with everything I own on my back. I said, my God, whatever happened to my dreams? I panhandled some money, and one more time I called Alcoholics Anonymous. I called this Montana cowboy. I said, Don, I'm ready to check into the mission. I'm ready to come back to AA. Will you come and get me? And he told me the most profound thing I've ever heard in my life. He said, no. He says, you know where we are. You know what we got. Why don't you get your rusty ass down here yourself? I'm tired of chasing after you. And he hung up. I said, my God, whatever happened to that AA love? I just heard it. And for the first time in my life, it was up to me to come to you. It was no longer necessary for me to inconvenience the people of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I found out what an alcoholic was. I found out what an alcoholic was. I used to think that an alcoholic is somebody who couldn't drink. An alcoholic is somebody who shouldn't drink. My friends, as I stand before you tonight, I know perfectly well that I'm an alcoholic and I can drink. Everything in me is faced that way. I am in the grips of a progressive disease. It has me. I don't have it. And what Alcoholics Anonymous does for me, it loosens up that grip enough for me to live the good life and to perpetuate this gift. To come back and tell you that I love you. That everything I got in my life is because of meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. That little girl that I love, turning 22, going and visiting that little girl on a daughter-daddy date, and she's sitting across from me, and she's got her mom's earrings on, and she's got her ears pierced, and she's got a ball bearing in her tongue, and she's got a tattoo around her belly. She says, "Daddy, what are you looking at?" I said, "The most beautiful little girl I've ever seen in my life." Because week after week, I look at you guys, and I see all your piercings, and I see all your tattoos, and behind every ball bearing, there's an alkie in there. And that's who I talk to. And behind every one of her piercings and tattoos, there's a little girl in there, and I love her. And that's who I talk to. And you told me that if she gets piercings or tattoos, to shut up. She can't do anything about it. Don't ruin a chance to be helpful later. If she has a big problem in her life, you want her to be able to come to you and tell you that problem. And if you make a big deal out of stuff like that, she'll say, "My God, he couldn't handle the tattoo. How's he going to handle this?" You told me that sometimes the best way to be of service is to keep my mouth shut. To let my wife cry in my arms because she lost her mother and her sponsor. And my sponsor told me, "Let her cry and don't give her any advice, kid." Magnificent thing called Alcoholics Anonymous. What are you going to do with a guy like me? You made me a plumber. You took me out of the gutters and you stuck me in the sewer, for God's sakes, you know. But I tell you, you introduced me to a loving God that I don't have to wonder about, a loving God that I don't have to imagine what he looks like. You see, I'm an alcoholic. I'm a stickler for evidence. I am a stickler for evidence. And in Brentwood tonight, I see row after row after row of people who should be locked up dead or insane. And look at us tonight. We're happy, we're joyous, and we're free. So I may not see the face of a loving God, but man, I can come and play in the evidence all night long. Thank you very much.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. Shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.